Welcome to the Red and Gold Report, your best source for weekly Chiefs news and updates. On this week's update, we're going to be looking at our first preseason game that's coming up. We're going to be looking at an all-pro Chief changing positions. We're going to be looking at a change at right tackle, and I'm going to be breaking down the tight end position heading into this season. And hey, if you want your Chiefs news brought to you by a guy who used to throw ice chunks at Raiders fans as a child at Arrowhead, then you've got to subscribe to this channel. In Chiefs news, the Chiefs' first preseason game will be Saturday the 14th against the 49ers. I know it's crazy how quickly it's come up. Of course, the Chiefs beat the 49ers just 2 seasons ago in the Super Bowl. As we head into the preseason, remember 2 things. First, this offseason, the NFL has moved from 16 regular season games to 17. Why did the NFL decide to add a game after 4 decades at 16 regular season games? Oh, I don't know, you know, money. However, that means that the NFL did trim the preseason from 4 preseason games down to 3 because, you know, the preseason really doesn't matter at all in any way. When I was with the Chiefs in the personnel department, the preseason barely registered as more important than a mid-camp practice. So you know what? Watch the Chiefs 3 preseason games. Have fun watching it. Football's coming back, but doesn't matter. So here's a question for you. If you were Andy Reid, would you even play Patrick Mahomes in the preseason? Or would you just hold him out because, yeah, Patrick knows the system, he's recovering from an injury, and it's just not worth the risk of injury? What do you think? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. In big news coming out of training camp, All-Pro Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones has dropped from 310 pounds to 292 pounds to fit a new hybrid role going between defensive tackle, his usual position, and now also defensive end. Now, the Chiefs' plan, it seems to be this. They have 3 defensive tackles of starting quality: Jones, Noddy, and the newly signed Reed. However, the defensive ends are about the quality of, I don't know, your 7th grade neighbor who has been hitting you up for Pee-wee fundraisers to buy like wrapping paper in the middle of August, right? They're kind of a joke. Jones is the 2nd best defensive tackle in the entire NFL, but at 6 feet 5 inches, he definitely has the length to play defensive end, right? So it seems that the Chiefs' plan is to play him in on more rundowns, 1st, 2nd down to mask our defensive end problem, and then put him back at defensive tackle on those passing plays, those 3rd down plays. Here's my take. It's great news that Jones dropped a bit of weight. I mean, Chris Jones, absolute beast of an elite defensive tackle, but his only nemesis is getting gassed at times and kind of getting nicked up. Being in better shape is only going to help those 2 things. However, moving your best player on defense out of position, that's an incredibly risky move, and only time will tell if it's going to pay off. The Chiefs are deep at defensive tackle, and they're not good at defensive end. So I get it, but I'm a little worried. In other news out of training camp, there's an update on the offensive line. Mike Rimmers, the assumed starting offensive right tackle, well, he's been out of practices with an injured back. Now, this has allowed Lucas Niang to practice with the starting line throughout much of camp. Remember, Niang was a 3rd-round draft pick 2 drafts ago, but sat out last season. And this is actually a really good thing. Like I discussed a few weeks ago when we broke down the offensive tackles, Rimmers is at his best as a backup guard and a backup right tackle, but he struggles in pass protection as a tackle. You watched the Super Bowl. You know that. The best case scenario of what could happen is what's happening. Niang might earn the right tackle spot, and that pushes Rimmers back into a reserve role. That would be great. So pay attention to that one. In other news, Chiefs websites all over the interwebs are trying to convince you that a variety of absences from some of the practices for some of the Chiefs are really meaningful. They want to tell you that Laurent Duvernay-Tardif missing a few practices, that means something, and that Callaway or Okafor or Gay, those absences, they're really meaningful to the season. Because of course, that way you click on their stupid articles. But guess what? Doesn't matter. With that recent news all done, each week I've been taking time to grade one position, break down and grade one position on the Chiefs. This week, we're going to be looking at the tight ends, which really, it is all about Travis Kelce, right? I mean, Travis Kelce is clearly the best tight end in the NFL. Last year, Travis Kelce had the best season of any tight end ever. He caught for 1,416 receiving yards. That was the highest by any tight end in a single season ever, even though the coaches had him sit out the final game to get, healthy for the playoffs. He also had 105 receptions and 11 receiving touchdowns. To add to that, according to Pro Football Focus, he received a grade of 93.8. He was the only tight end that even graded above 89 last year. So it wasn't even close. He was the best. Now, there's a bunch of haters out there, and those haters are going to tell you that Kelce isn't a great run blocker because they're dirty, rotten liars. Actually, he's a great run blocker if you actually watch the games instead of just believing what you see online. According to Pro Football Focus, Kelce had a 77.2 run blocking grade last year. Now, how good was that? Well, that was the third best among all tight ends. And the only two tight ends who were graded better at run blocking than him, they didn't even catch half the yards as him. To put that 77.2 run blocking grade in perspective, Darren Waller of the Raiders, great pass catching tight end, well, he only graded at 49.7 run blocking grade. Noah Fant of the Broncos, he only got a 53.7. Gronkowski only got a 55 as a run blocker. So for a tight end, Kelce was actually really a dominant run blocker last season because he's the best tight end in the NFL. He just is. Also, Kelce is really used in a flexible way. Last year, he lined up in line, which is standard for a tight end, for 463 snaps. But he lined up wide like a receiver, 341 snaps. He lined up in the slot like a slot receiver for 251 snaps. And he was even in the backfield for 27 snaps. So Kelce only lined up as a traditional tight end 43% of the snaps last year. He was incredibly flexible, and that helps the offense. For reference, Rob Gronkowski lined up in line as a traditional tight end 88% of his snaps last season. So you can see how much more flexible Kelce is able to be used than other tight ends because he's the best tight end in the league. He has so perfected his technique that he is now leading camps for other NFL tight ends. Take a couple of drives when you're watching the Chiefs play this season and just sit back and watch Travis run routes. It is so smooth, it's precise. He always seems to find that soft spot right in the zone and coverage. I mean, he runs like a wide receiver, but he's huge. He is 6'5", 260 pounds. Dude is the best tight end in the league. And all the 49ers fans who think Kittle is the best tight end and all the Gronkowski fans, just know that you're as delusional as a Nicolas Cage superfan who thinks that he should be winning Oscars. Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the league. And it's not close. We really need to start putting Travis Kelce's greatness in its historical context instead of just comparing him to the other current tight ends in the NFL, who he's clearly a lot better than. As long as he is healthy, Travis Kelce should move into the 5th spot in receiving yards all time for a tight end during this next season. Only Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates, and Shannon Sharp will have had more receiving yards than Kelce by the end of this season. I mean, Kelce is becoming one of those Mount Rushmore tight ends of the NFL. Think about this. Travis is only 31 years old and is taking great care of himself. Now, the top 4 leading receivers at tight end of all time in the NFL all made it to the ages of 36 to 39 when they retired. So let's kind of split the difference and just imagine that Kelce ends up retiring in something like 6 years at the age of 37. So you've got 6 seasons left-ish. So let's say he's going to average 1,000 yards in each of those 6 seasons. And he has right now nearly 8,000 yards at the moment. So he would end his career with 14,000 yards. That would put him as the second leading tight end of all time in reception yards. Second to who? You know. None other than Kansas City great Tony Gonzalez. So get this, in 6 or 7 years, we very well could be talking about the Chiefs having the top 2 tight ends of all time having played within their franchise. That's how good Travis is. It's not just that Kelce is the best tight end in the league right now. He's already one of the best in history. That brings us to the backup tight ends. Last year, Chiefs backups at tight end were Deion Yelder, Ricky Seals-Jones, and Nick Keizer. And let's just cut to the chase, they were pretty awful, right? But the Chiefs actually fixed that this offseason. And they did it in a brilliantly low-cost way. I mean, it didn't take a lot of picks, didn't take a lot of money. First, they brought back Blake Bell, who, if you remember, Bell had been Kelce's backup just a couple seasons ago. And they only had to give him a 1-year, $1 million deal. So it was near the veteran minimum. Now, Bell graded as the top pass blocking tight end in the league last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Best pass blocker in the league at tight end. Now, Kelce's only so-so part of his game is his pass blocking, where he ranks as average. So Bell is a great complement to Kelce. Then second, the Chiefs drafted Noah Gray out of Duke with a 5th-round pick. Gray is a good athlete who could develop into a serious second-string tight end as a receiving threat. He has good footwork, good movement skills, good routes. He's a touch undersized, yeah, but that's not going to really matter as primarily a receiving tight end. And reports out of the offseason workouts, out of training camp, out of the coaches, man, the reports on Gray are very, very positive. I'm not sure who's going to be the second stringer, Bell or Gray. However, I do think that they are a nice complement to Kelce. Think back in the day. A few of you've been Chiefs fans as long as I have. Remember when Tony Gonzalez was the obvious pass catcher and Jason Dunn was the run-blocking tight end to complement Tony? Well, today in Reed's offense, Kelce needs a pass blocker and a pass catcher behind him, which seems to be just what the depth chart provides with Bell and Gray. So all in all, I am giving the Chiefs tight ends an A heading into this season. Kelce is the best tight end in the league. Bell is a great complement as a pass blocker, and Gray has a bunch of potential as a receiver. So an A it is. Thanks for watching the Red and Gold Report. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the like button on this video. We're going to see you next week right back here, and go Chiefs.